Hey, what's up guys? This is Joby, and in this video I wanted to share something that I worked on these last couple of days, which is basically a list of what I think, in my opinion, are the best stats that you should aim for when gearing your Barbarian in D4. I took a look at all the resources out there and made my own testing, so I'm pretty confident in the information I'm providing here. But keep in mind that this approach, or my approach to gearing, is more balanced. Maybe yours is. So all these stats that I'm picking with the goal of having like a really balanced character in terms of offense and defense. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully this list will also still be valid whenever season 1 comes out. If it's not, I'll make sure to update it as soon as I can so you can have the most up-to-date information. I will also make sure to link the sheet that I worked on in the description below if you want to take a look at that. With that being said, let's get started. First of all, helmets. On helmets, you should go for CDR first, Max Fury if you're playing Hoda, Total Armor, and then high rolls of maximum life. If you're not playing Hoda, however, you should go for Strength or Damage while Berserking as a 4th stat. And in this case, Damage while Berserking is slightly better if you have a reliable way of gaining and maintaining Berserking. Otherwise, just go for Strength. A small note on why CDR is very important though. As Barbarians, we are very reliant on our shouts, and CDR helps a ton with that and with uptime, so it's a very important stat, knowing that it's also very rare as a modifier because it's only available on helmets and amulets. Second, body armors. For the body armor part, or for the body armors, alongside with pants, both are the prime source of defensive stats on your gear. In addition to that, and what makes like the decision making so much easier when it comes to those modifiers is that the offensive stats are not very good, and inversely the defensive stats are much better. So that makes my life much easier when picking those. So yeah, these stats to aim for are damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction while fortified. Both of these conditions are easily met, and then damage reduction from bleeding enemies if you are playing a bleeding build. Otherwise, you would go for total armor instead, and then ranks of challenging shout. Third, for your gloves. Gloves are offensive items, and on those you should aim for ranks of your core skill. Only go for 3 here, otherwise the damage loss is substantial. Then crit chance, then strength, then crit chance against injured. My reasoning for this is that having 12% crit chance on enemies that are under 35% is nicer than any other stat that you can that can take that spot. And this is more important when you are fighting bosses, and then even more important if you're trying to fight Uber Lilith, because the last 35% part will take much longer than you think. So just keeping that in mind. Now for pants. For pants, it's a copy paste on the of the body armor rolls, so you should go for damage reduction close, damage reduction while fortified, and damage reduction from bleeding. If you're not playing bleeding, you would go for total armor instead, and then a high maximum life roll instead of the challenging shout ranks, because that stat is not available on pants. And then the other difference is that now we have implicits on pants, on both pants and boots actually, and the pants implicits are both good, but keep in mind that you can use the gain percentage life barrier on potion as a way to trigger the damage buff from the conceded aspect, which gives you another damage multiplier whenever you have a barrier. Also note that you can roll dodge chance on your pants, and it's a good way to gain effective HP. And in fact, it's a very good stat, but if you don't like dodge as a mechanic, you can just skip that one. Boots now. For the boots, you should aim for the following. Implicit wise, go for either max evade or attack reduce evade CD. Both are on par, I would say. For these stats, you would go for movement speed, fury cost reduction, movement speed after killing an elite, and then dodge chance against distant. My reasoning for this one, for dodge chance against distant, is that we are stacking a lot of damage reduction from close, and we find ourselves vulnerable to ranged attacks. So having up to 15% to completely ignore those is a very nice addition. For your amulets, you should go for CDR, of course, first, then Fury cost reduction or ranks of heavy-handed or Wallop or whatever rank. I would say those two are the most important ones, but then if you have a different take or like have a specific passive that you want to go for, again, you can put it here, but you have to keep in mind that losing the Fury cost reduction for some people will make your gameplay a bit clunky. So keep that in mind, because, for example, heavy-handed is a very, very good crit damage multiplier, and Wallop is just a simple 15% more damage if the enemy is vulnerable. So those are huge amount of increases, but at the cost of, having less like skill cost reduction. So yeah, and then damage reduction from close, or whatever damage reduction actually stat you would prefer. You can go for damage reduction from distant here, but it depends really on the content that you're doing. I would say if you're going for Uber Lilith, maybe going for damage reduction from distant is a better choice. But yeah, you'll have to judge depending on your build and your situation here. And then as a fourth stat, I would say ranks of defensive skills, which basically gives you 3 ranks to Challenging Shout and then 3 ranks to Rallying Cry. And I think this is the best choice here because it basically gives you the opportunity to double dip on 2 passives, not 2 passives, on 2 skills. And also the resource generation boost from the ranks of Rallying Cry will help you ditch the Fury cost reduction that I was talking about as a second stat and go for those ranks of Heavy-Handed or Wallop or whatever you want to do. For your rings, you should aim for vulnerable damage, crit chance, crit damage, and then resource generation. Rings are pretty straightforward. Weapons are pretty much the same in terms of like straightforwardness. The only difference for rings that you can maybe go for is probably if you need a bit more life, or you judge that you need a bit more life, you can ditch 1 resource generation on 1 ring. But again, it really depends on your build and how much you are struggling in terms of Fury, so keep that in mind. For your weapons, first thing you want to keep in mind, for your stat sticks, pretty much always go for swords, because those will give you implicit wise or baseline will give you crit damage, because swords give you crit damage. And then you go for vulnerable damage, crit damage, strength, and then core skill damage if you're playing Whirlwind, or damage to close if you're playing something else. And yeah, for your main weapon, of course, like the damage roll is the most important thing, I would say, depending on like the build and the type of weapon you're using. But otherwise, this should be like, again, those stats are the ones that you want to go for either on your main weapon or on your stat sticks. The only difference is that for the stat sticks, for the one-handed swords, for example, you should always go for swords because of the crit damage baseline, like item implicit. But I know that it's not always easy, because finding like the perfect item with vulnerable, crit, strength, blah blah blah, and also being a sword is not very easy. So again, I'm just telling you what the best thing is. With that being said, that's pretty much it for the stats and for the sheet. Again, I'll make sure to link it below so you can take a look by yourselves. And yeah, last thing I wanted to touch on is, but I'm gonna like keep it for another video, which is basically core skill damage versus damage to close regarding Whirlwind, because there's some stuff going on there, and also why I think Gores are probably a bait. Not a bait, but not as good as you think after playing with them for such a long time. But those are, I will keep those topics for 2 other different videos that I will upload within 24 hours, I think. I'll try to do my best to have them out as soon as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully this will help some of you. If you have any feedback, or you're not, you think I made some mistakes here and there, or have you like a different take on certain stats or certain like scaling, whatever, please feel free to let me know and I will correct it as fast as I can. And yeah, you guys take care and see you soon. Bye bye.